Good day. Yes, finally. Sorry. Okay, seems like people here from New Zealand, not Australia. That's fine. Yay. Good Kiwi. Yeah. So my name is Andy, and I'm going to be presenting the FPS Sample project, which was released at the end of last year. But it's had some updates since, so I'm going to focus some of this talk on those recent updates and kind of give a general overview of the project and a couple of cool things that is in it. So this talk is very art safari, I call it, where you walk around and point at the pretty, not lines, but pretty shaders and the pretty lighting and things like this, and more of a tour guide. So my name's Andy. I'm based in Unity Technologies Copenhagen, which is always cold and always dark. So they said, do you want to go to Sydney? I'm like, yes, yes. And I come here and then it's a little bit overcast, so I brought it with me. So Unity Technologies Copenhagen, we do a wide range of things. A lot of it is R&D and core development. But we also have there both the demo team that make like the big demos like the Heretic and Adam and things like this, but also a new-ish team called Sample Game, who are going to create sample game projects. And this is their first project that they made. And they're working on other stuff, but I can't show it yet. And it's not finished yet. So FPS Sample, as an overview, is a example project that you can actually download right now entirely for free and do whatever you want with the assets. And the mold of FPS Sample is it's kind of like a hero-based shooter, but like a nice vertical slice. So there's two characters with slightly different properties and slightly different weapons. We have on the left the terraformer, and on the right, just dropping down, is the robot, and we'll talk a bit about those later. It has one main full level of different assets and things. Plus, it also has like a white box prototype level as well, so you have different varieties. And it's got lots of other mechanics and things. And a lot of this talk is going to be just walking through the environment, pointing out some key stuff, and also some of the tools that the team made that you can extract and use in your own projects. Does that sound fun? Cool. So these are the two main characters of the project. We have the terraformer on the left and the robot on the right. And there is actually a deeper lore in the project, not as deep as Dark Souls lore, which goes on for many, many books to read. But basically, the setting of, rather than just setting a very boring white box, the setting is the robots inhabit this planet with different diggers and mining tools. And the terraformers then crash into the planet, and their plants that they carry kind of terraform the environment. And the capture points in the project are basically the areas that the plants are controlling and terraforming. So we have these two main characters, and they're fully animated, rigged. You can take them. They even have Ragdoll versions as well, so you can throw them around and they can fall over and stuff. And that's pretty cool. And the environment is kind of a mix of between a kind of rocky, they wanted to cover as many bases as possible in like one Unity scene. So it's kind of got this weird rocky nature-like environment. Plus they also have metallic elements and also these like weird alien plants. So they kind of want to cover lots of different bases all within the same Unity project rather than just doing a metal scene or a outdoor forest scene and things like this. So why has Unity actually made this project? That's a pretty big question. So the first thing is that the Sample Game team is 3 programmers, 2 artists and 2 technical animators at the time of making this, and they all come from AAA, most of them coming from IO Interactive, who are most famous for making the Hitman games, and also I think Kane and Lynch and probably some other stuff. But Hitman's the main thing. So basically we hired a bunch of people. They all worked on the Hitman series. And they're bringing all this knowledge of making these bigger open world games to Unity. And because they're based in Copenhagen, they sort of give a lot of feedback directly to R&D, which is incredibly valuable having a much more complex project such as this. And they wanted to demonstrate and share's kind of the important part, the types of tools more complex projects require. So they built a lot of tools or a lot of things to test networking or to run console messages and things like this on top of Unity, which they eventually shared. So basically showing a lot of things that they made with other engines and their own Unity projects and sort of bring it in, kind of make kind of a nice standard or a nice package that you could extract and bring into your own projects. And this is kind of a quote that the art director said. He wanted to make a manual without words. So if you download the project, you can start harvesting info. So you're like, oh, how is the plant super juicy? Or has this weird gummy texture, and you can go and just grab the textures and rip them out. So you can actually take everything in the project and just hack it out and harvest from it code or knowledge or textures and artwork and things like this. I've already started seeing the characters pop up as selectable skins in other projects, which is actually super cool. So And you can obviously go through all the code and things like this and see how they made projectiles and stuff. And they wanted to create kind of intermediate and advanced content for the community. A lot of Unity projects, admittedly, that we make are very like beginner level or kind of like entry level, like, hey, let's make a ball roll around, which is super useful and super needed. But as a lot of people are kind of already shipped several things Unity, they want to advance their skills. So they wanted to make this more complex project for people to dissect. And they're going to continue making other sample projects in the future that cover other types of games and things. And they wanted to bring kind of their AAA knowledge of making games like Hitman in terms of programming, fundamentals, art patterns and workflows, and animation techniques into Unity. So if you actually look through the code, they've actually like left a lot of hacks and tricks and code comments in, so you can see all the things that they did, because they didn't want to remove them. Well, they removed some messages, but I won't say what the messages said. But you could at least go in there and say, oh, we do this because we just have to do it, because otherwise the frame rate drops. They've left all that stuff in there in GitHub, so you can go read all their stuff. And hopefully over time they remove these and tidy them up a little bit. And yeah, there are already people finding like weird little nuggets inside the code base. So yeah, please download it. It's on GitHub. Dissect it, hack it, mod it if you want to, harvest it, break it. Like basically, yeah, just take the project and do all sorts of stuff with it. So yeah. Actually, one thing we did in internal Hack Week, and I took all of the Unity mascots and put them in as playable characters in the game. So it's super fun having Unity-chan, our Japanese mascot, shooting like a little teddy bear that was running around as well. So that we had like fun dissection of that workflow. So I'm now going to jump over to the editor, which I prefer to show off a lot more. So this is the larger level, or level_01, imaginatively named. And the larger level is basically kind of a map that's, if I zoom in, which sort of starts around here, around this crashed spaceship. So that's like one start point. It's kind of Overwatch-esque, where they spawn at the other ends of the map, and then you capture points. And it sort of ends around here, and that's where the robots spawn. And there's lots of indoor tunnels and caves and things. And one thing you might notice is that they wanted to have a nice outdoor environment to show how you do kind of outdoor lighting in this one Unity scene. But they also wanted to do lots of indoor elements, so how you blend from outdoor to indoor lighting, which is often quite a complex thing to do in any tool or framework. And they really wanted to have an example project that showed how they did this. So if I fly in, you've got this kind of like half indoor environment, which is half shaded, and then you've got inside here like darker tunnels using volumetric fog, which I seem to be obsessed with by this point. Plus you've got all this, this tunnel's a death corridor when you actually play the game. There's and you've got all this really cool stuff in the project. So you can go in, fly around, grab things, grab all the assets, and play with them. So I'm actually just going to go and start running around and start shooting stuff and see how it looks. I'm going to play single player because I don't have any friends connected. So yeah. So basically with the project, they wanted to make it so there's obviously audio in the background. So they wanted to make this first-person shooter that had a lot of different elements that you would expect from an FPS. So you have projectiles, explosions, and audio, and all these different things in this environment. So currently I'm the robot running around, and like I said, it's Overwatch-esque, where you get like a set of weapons per character. And I'll show you kind of the ability system they made, so you can actually swap out abilities and things, which is cool. Got these darker corridors. They got these capture zones, which I'll talk a bit about later on. So those are actually, that blue line effect is actually made using the VFX graph. So you can actually extract these VFX graph effects. And they made a really cool blog post about how they set this all up. They've also got these explosions. These barrels are way too like intense, I'll be honest. Run over here. Let's drop down here. We've also got some like things off in the distance. Pretty much everything in the project has a form of LOD, except for I think the characters. No, actually, one of the characters has LODs. Oh, that's a ship flying over above. The first time that happened, I was like, "Oh, the shadow's broken," and then forgot that they pushed the commit of all the ships flying. So we then have this kind of big, weird open environment. There's a massive kill box down there, so I'm not going to jump down. We have all these like little ships flying around, and this asteroid belt. And that actual sun is actually made entirely with shader graph on a quad, which is actually kind of a fun little thing. So let's have a walk through here. So So we've also got like indoor environments with more glowing emissiveness. So in the keynote I showed kind of a bit of the volume-based system and also in the Heretic talk. So they've got like indoor volumes and outdoor volumes for different types of lighting conditions. So we've got a more darker, deeper corridor here. Yeah, they really cranked this up. This wasn't me. I like cranking all the volumetrics up, but they did this. They've also got these indoor caves, and they've got a lot of really nice fun things to play with. So unfortunately I don't have a teleport button, but let's go out to a more light location. I think through here. This robot's so slow. Okay, so basically we have this environment that you can go in, and already as an environment artist you can go and dissect all the different things, grab the textures from the rocks and put them in your own projects. So another thing is they have characters. So currently we're running around in first person. But to kind of test a lot of the animations and things like this, they wanted to also put it to third person, rather than saying, hey, can you connect to my server, and then I can guess that the animation system's working. And part of this is they wanted to create a console where you could type in commands and hook up variables and methods. So a lot of things like switching to third person, switching character, changing quality settings and stuff like this. So they made this generic console, so if you drop this into your project, you can add config vars and basically say, if you type this into the console, it'll run this method. So you'll probably see me in the talk open up this console and type some commands to do things. So let's switch to the other character. So this other character is kind of like, if you play Overwatch, kind of like a tracer character. She runs around and has this kind of spray machine gun fire. But she's also got a projectile that moves through the space and then explodes using a VFX graphic effect. And the reason of showing both machine gun and also rocket launcher fire, and the robot also has like a grenade that's physics driven, it bounces and then does a physics area damage, is to kind of show the different networking systems and how you would set these things up to be simulated very nicely on a server. So for example, the machine gun weapon basically does raycast scan against the surface, and that's all hooked into the networking system, so you can see how you do that over the network. So if you shoot someone, it will then do like a rollback to the position they were at that point if they have low ping, so they don't say, you didn't hit me, I dodged your bullets, and then the whole server can roll back and see where the raycast hits. The lead network programmer gave a really good 1-hour talk about this, and he can explain it way better than I. And with the rocket projectile, this is basically showing how you would spawn a projectile and then on the server then update its position before it collides with something and creates an explosion. And all of these things also hook into our ECS system as well. So these are all using the new entities and dots frameworks. So you can dissect these and open them and see how they work. So I promised third person, so I'll do that. So I have a command for third person. So we have here the terraformer character. So she actually runs around, and her top of her body is basically masked towards which position you're aiming at, whilst her legs are kind of IK. They have an IK system based into here. So if you're doing an IK project, you can also do rocket jump, which are super. It's got like a little jetpack as well, which is kind of cool. So these characters are basically fully rigged, fully masked, and everything, and you can go in and dissect all the different elements. Another thing that we can do, so I think it's debug.camera detach. So yeah, there's lots of fun commands. So here we have the character, and her animation system is also hooked into the networking. So you can basically see how you can do things such as, she's got like lots of colliders for the different limbs. So as she's jumping in the air and you shoot the foot, it's going to do like foot damage rather than capsule damage for the whole body. So yeah, shooting the head obviously does more damage than say the arms and things like this. And another fun little command, camera detach 2. So now I can fly around. So yeah, and then we have this character fully rendered here. And the project's built on top of using the high definition render pipeline, which you might have heard quite a bit. And what the team wanted to do is not just make like sort of like a realistic thing. They wanted to kind of do that Overwatch where it's kind of half toony, half PBR-y that Overwatch has. It has this very nice straddled line. So we got this character with some honeycomb on her armor. It's all like kind of beeswax honeycomb, as well as having sort of very metallic gun and very metallic features and things. I think the honeycomb also glows in the dark, which is pretty cool as well. And if I now switch to the, so this is the robot. He's obviously a bit bigger and clunkier, and he's got this kind of cool rumble animation. And he obviously is a very different type of character. He holds a gun in one hand instead of the other one is in two hands. So they try to make two different characters that have very different kind of like traits and skills and things. And I think he's a little bit slower and his jump is weaker, but his health is greater or something. There's like some weird little balances there. So yeah, we've got these different things. So if we leave play mode, let's have a look at some other fun tools. So obviously we can fly around this scene and have a look at all the different elements and all the different parts. So we've got these super nice smokestacks in the distance. We also have things like the little ships flying around. But another important aspect of this sample game team creating the project and creating the tools is kind of all the things about workflow and productivity. So they made various tools on top of Unity, which they built in other engines or used in other engines. And kind of integrated their own equivalents in Unity. So they made this project tools window. And the project tools window is basically kind of like their quick view of lots of different common processes, such as bootstrapping levels, loading test levels, building asset bundles as well. So if you create games using asset bundles to update content and weapons and things, all the assets are asset bundled, such as the character and the weapons and things. So if you're interested in that workflow, you can dissect that. They also got like a build game button, but they've also got this quick start. So you can basically spin up multiple local instances of the game to test locally the networking system. But the one thing I want to show is this level selector. So obviously levels are built up of lots of different scenes and things, and a lot of you have probably made something similar to this. So if I hit open level 00, nah. Basically, they basically made a quick hot switch to basically swap out different levels. So this is the white box level, which I don't think they're intending to ever ship or show. This is just for them to test whilst the art was being made. But they ended up polishing it up and shipping it anyway, which is, and add screen space reflections to cubes, which is quite funny, and all this stuff. So this is basically their test level, and it's a lot smaller, simplified level. So obviously you can run around this and shoot different things and stuff like that. But instead of doing this in the editor, we can actually spin up the local build. So using this quick start tool, we can basically specify things like which level, how many clients do you want to spin, is it a headless server? And hitting start will basically take that recently built game. And if you're making a network game, this is super key. And it will spin up multiple instances straight away on different teams and stuff like this. So it always does it full screen. So let's play. Oh, again, I have no friends, so I'm going to play by myself. Okay, so let's find the robots. so let's go here. I wish I could have multiple mice and keyboards. So yeah, basically it's a quick test networked games, and this one's running. So you can see we've got the robot here running around, clunky like. It's got a really cute jump as well, and you've got the terraformer there as well. Which one? So, and basically as we sort of like shoot the other player, then that's all connecting. That calculation of the projectile and things like this are then happening on the server before being presented to the client. So I mean, it's a little bit one-sided, I'll be honest. And then he falls down with Ragdoll. Falls down with Ragdoll mode. And then they have like a defenders, attackers, both no names. So I'm currently winning and also losing. And then he'll eventually spawn somewhere else. So they basically made these quick spin tools to, and I hit stop all, so I don't have to go and close multiple windows, which is super fun, to test the networked game locally and quickly and efficiently. So let's talk about some other aspects of the project. So they use the volume system for all these different lighting and all these different light setups. The lighting is actually baked, and they've tried to tune the bake details to be as fast as possible. And you can go in and basically extract how they set up lighting, how they set up daylight, and how they set up screen space reflections for nice green cubes. and all these different things. That was a joke, by the way, but I know I'm not very funny. It goes down much better in Europe. So let's, well, I prefer being the Terraform artist. So let's go down here and show some other cool console and stats tools that they made. So let's go down to here. So using this console, they basically built a lot of different features and functionality hooked in. So, and I wrote them down because my memory is like a goldfish. So one thing that they implemented, which is really important for online multiplayer games, is net stats. And of course that command didn't work. Net stats. Oh, of course, that's not happening on the server. Let me just spin up a local game. It's actually a lot faster than going into play mode. Spin up a local. Okay. So we've got basically this local game that's been built, spin up. So let's open up the console and do something. Do something cool. So we'll go net stats. So basically they built a lot of these kind of I think there's very minimal garbage allocation with these graphs and tools to basically detect how the networking is processing packets being sent back and forth. So as I shoot and do different things, obviously it's just me on the server, a lot of these different elements of latency is affected by how the packets are being sent. Because basically on the client side, is very minimal. Like you basically have the keyboard, a mouse, and these things, like the inputs being sent, and almost all of the processing is being done on the server. So that way they can keep the client build very small, and then a lot of the processing happening on the server instead. So they built various tools to basically show what the current packet loss is and things like that. Let's turn that off. Another thing that they built in is quality. So quality control is obviously very important. So a lot of these settings is obviously tweakable directly from this console or in the game. So if I turn the bloom off, okay, it doesn't look that much different. So let's turn SSAO off. So you can see you can tweak a lot of the quality settings and then preview them directly on the build. So rather than going back and forth and guessing and implementing sliders and tweaking things, you can go in and tweak these things individually. So yeah, yes, I do want to quit. I'll show you some other cool stuff. Let's actually kind of do some, I call it soft modding, because normally when you say modding, people assume, oh, you're building a whole economy and all this stuff, and going to upload all these characters and things, which is cool, but I'm going to show you some soft modding, which is basically tweaking values in the project. So one thing I want to do is I want to tweak a value based on the gun. So what the team did is they exposed a lot of values and things to scriptable objects. And if you've used scriptable objects in your projects, you're probably already very familiar with how useful and amazing they can be, and all the other workflows that come with them. So what they did is they basically, in the project, created a lot of different scriptable objects that reference lots of things. So here they have a scriptable object for the projectile entities that are spawned. So if you're navigating the project, you're not entirely sure where all the elements are spawned, such as the rockets or the grenades and things like this. You can come to this bundled resources folder and have a lookup representation of the grenades, the replicated entities, the characters, and all these different elements. If I zoom down. Now, each character has a set of ability scriptable objects. So let's go to the ability of the terraformer, which is the projectile launcher. And they've tried to expose a lot of these tweakable values publicly. So you can go in and soft tweak things. So you can change different elements such as rocket fire or jump height and things like this. So currently, the activation duration of the rocket launcher is 0.5. That's boring. Let's make more. So you can go in and they try to tweak and expose a lot of these different settings if you want to go in. So let's be Terraform because the robot's too slow. So now, obviously a lot more fireworks instantly. So they try to make things as kind of tweakable and as fun as possible. It'd be pretty cool if actually people took the project and build like Counter-Strike style climb maps as well, with Pro Builder, which I definitely didn't spend my whole childhood playing CS 1.6, so yeah. So yeah, they basically expose a lot of these values out to here. Another really cool thing that they did is they heavily leaned on the new prefab system. So all the elements, all the characters kind of stem from a single kind of like asset, a representation of the character, and they basically split. So as you can see here in the project folder, the Terraform is split into lots of individual prefab variants for different purposes. So for example, we have the first person rig, which isn't spawned on the server, is instead spawned on the client. So you can see basically your hands and not your full character. And then we have the client's prefab, which is basically the one spawned on the client. So this is what other people look like. We then have a menu version, which I'll show you a little bit later on. We also have the hit collision ragdoll, which is quite hilarious. It looks like this. And then you can see you've got all the little separate hit collision points. You can obviously open up these prefabs and see how they implemented things like hit collision and ragdoll and things. Let's go to the ragdoll one. Yeah, so she's actually invisible, but we basically have a lot of scripts and a lot of different settings to control how the ragdoll is being represented. And we also have the one on the server, which is a lot simpler, a lot more basic. So they tried to, instead of taking one prefab of the Terraform, making this big monolith of lots of different elements and parts, they tried to at least split and divide a lot of these different sections. Just looking at time, so I'll reopen this other scene, because there's something I forgot to show. Surprise, surprise. Jet lag is kicking in, or still kicking in. So an interesting part of this project is actually how the environment has been laid out. So almost all of the parts of the environment are actually generally modular. So all these different things like this drum here, these vents, these dials here, and things like this are actually individual kind of like pieces and parts. So they've tried to make the level as kind of modular as possible. Like you have these blast doors. These are all individual blast door pieces, and all these pipes are individual parts. So they tried to kind of, I guess the term is kit bash a lot of the environment, so you can at least take these out, and rather than having one big environment piece, you've got lots of individual plants and pieces. So a couple of other Unity demos, we've taken out these plants and put them in AR, and taken out these walls and built new levels and things like this. So you can sort of, I'm expecting to see these plants in lots of projects in the future because they look super nice. And that's totally okay. We want people to extract different things. But one of my favorite facts is that they used 3 rocks for the whole level. So actually the base, so where the sand is actually using the terrain system, I think off the top of my head, or it's at least a big mesh. And then all these little rocks that are placed around the edge are actually the same 3 rocks, rotated and copy-pasted. And I said this once in a talk, and some guy in the front row almost like, he was like, what? He was like, and I think he shouted out, prove it, right? He said maybe something ruder, but I'm not going to repeat it. He said something, he's like, prove it. I'm like, well, okay. So basically, yeah, we have each individual rock has like a triplanar shader to mix it in a little better. So you notice it's got lots of kind of triplanar cracks on it. And then if you go to the actual rock folder, we have a rock planet A, rock planet B, and rock planet C. So we basically have 3 rocks. And we have little boulders, like the tiny little things, but so no one cares about them. So yeah, we've got 3 rocks for the whole environment. So you can take out and apply these wherever you want. What else should I show? Oh, let's show some particles. So this is kind of a fun story. So they originally shipped the project. I won't go through this page, 'cause it's basically everything I said. They originally shipped the project using the current or old particle system that Unity has had for 6 years or 7 years. So they originally shipped it with this. And then the VFX graph team, who are making the visual effect graph, they were like, oh, we want to just have some fun with the visual effect graphs. They actually took the project and actually translated all of the particle systems over to the visual effect graph, so all the particles on the GPU. And they're like, oh, let's use this as kind of a learning experience. And they blogged the whole thing, which is actually pretty cool. So they actually went through all the nitty-gritty of how they hooked it all up into the system, the entity code, networking, LODs. They went through and compared all things. They were like, oh, we learned this thing. That's pretty cool. all the graphs. So they actually went through and documented this whole sort of, I guess, conversion process for like other people to go read and see. And it's pretty fun because you can, when you download the project, you get a lot of these fun things to play with. So if I drag in, I think this furnace here, I don't know why it went over there. Unity works in mysterious ways. So basically, this is just a single VFX graph for the furnace, but I could already see people lifting it and putting it in their Dark Souls lava level and stuff like this. But it's pretty cool that they made all these kind of like very, well, like they're specific into the project, so they had this heat in one of the furnace areas later on, but they kind of made them a little generic enough. So we've got like this lit steam particle system here as well. I guess that's okay. We've got this chimney smoke stack. So let's raise this up. So we've got this like super nice, whoa, I don't know what's happening there. Let's look at it from this angle. So we've got this sort of like smokestack, which you can obviously download and extract, and everyone wants to put smoke in their games apparently, or everyone wants to put bubbles in their games. It's up to you. So kind of a new thing is we're taking the project and then updating it with different things. So I think it originally shipped with the old text, and then TextMesh Pro was obviously came out, and then they said, hey, let's update everything to TextMesh Pro. So they're always kind of updating or tweaking all these different things. Havoc, actually, because we announced a partnership with Havoc to integrate some more like kind of Havoc-based physics system. So they took the project and made like a playground where you can run around and play with all the different Havoc swings and all their physics simulations. And they had the robot and Ragdoll mode, and you could like throw the Ragdoll everywhere. So it's pretty cool that we have this kind of nice sandbox environment to experiment with particles and all these different, oh wow, that's pretty big now. And all these different things. So I'm kind of running out of time, but there's one thing I want to show if I can. Actually, it'd be faster for me to actually quick launch it. So as well as making kind of the larger level and then the smaller level, they also made this level menu. And they tried to implement lots of like little mini cutscenes that are not interactive, but they trigger when you look at different menu options. Okay, that definitely didn't work. Everyone ignore what just happened, please. I've run out of time. I knew I'd run out of time. So basically, if you go to the Unity website or Google, both are pretty good, and search for FPS Sample, it will probably pop up in one of the first 5 or so. We then have kind of more of an overview of the project, and specifically the lead arts director of the project and also the lead programmer and network programmer on the project both gave like 1-hour talks where they go way more specifically into the art process and also networking process. So they can obviously explain those things a lot greater than I. And they've also got other nice slides and videos and things. But actually, if you go to GitHub, that's probably the more interesting place. You can then get the whole project. But don't use the download button because it requires Git LFS, and we can't disable this button, which is really annoying. So you have to clone the project because it uses large file sizes. We get a lot of emails saying, why can't I download it? And yeah, so make sure you clone the project. And there's obviously like documentation and all sorts of different guides and things. A lot of what I just said, but also some more specifics about how things such as the animation system works, because I only kind of touched on that very, very briefly. So if we go to the animation system, there's a lot more information about how they authored all the animation in Maya and then sort of created that pipeline coming across. So yeah, they've got way more specific information than, yeah, obviously you can all read it, this homework that's here. It's a shame that that last thing didn't work, but that's okay. Okay, I already said all this. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of this overview. Hopefully I sort of touched on lots of different topics. The project is way bigger than, well, it's about 50 gig, but the project is way bigger for me to explain more different things. So you can download it from there and download it from GitHub. If you have any other questions, I'm sort of hanging around for the rest of the day, which is coming to an end, I guess. But I also have email and also Twitter, but also on the forums and Discord and Slack, and PayPal is also a good way to get in contact with me. And no, I'm joking. You get a faster response through paper. No, I'm joking. But yeah, if you download the project and you hack it, dissect, even if you use like one line of code from it or something, let us know, because we want to know. We want to know what people do with it, and we're like super excited to see what people do with this whole free project. I don't think you even have to credit Unity, but that would be nice. But yeah, so hopefully that was useful, and have fun. Have a fantastic rest of Unite Sydney. Thank you.